do tema pictures kami. Na nas kumuan ko tao, ko tagi sigaw, mi guak, mina, pagosito ma ko tao, tamin guak, nesto tama, psis, tantio, chimoina, kagi uto tema gage. Foremost, I just want to greet everybody out there, my relatives. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to continue sharing and promoting our knowledge, our culture. And I ask Creator that, I foremost thank Him for this beautiful day, another day of life that He has given us. This time when we transfer knowledge and these spiritual stories, we often start out with a prayer or also with song, so that this energy, what we refer to as Isiwin, and this Isiwin is not so much of a law, but being able to reconnect with various energies that we live amongst today, and being able to afford our own creation story as to where our languages come from. And I know that we share a commonality right across indigenous people on Turtle Island. And I want to note that this is foremost, I want to say that our knowledges come and sit in these four directions. And there are many knowledge keepers that share their wisdom and their stories. They come from the walks of life of our First Nation people. So I hold value, and these stories that have been afforded to me by my grandparents and the elders that have been put in my pathway. Little bit about where I come from. I come from Bimichikamak Cree Nation. My father grew up all his life there, Jack, and my mother was from Norrie House. I was actually born in Norrie House. My grandparents were Johnston Blacksmith and Mary North, that really took a turn in my life and mentored me. I've only received an education up to grade 7 and veered off to the left to go and learn from the elders. I've after beginning to get lost in my path of being in a residential school and also in the day school scholar, and also being part of the 60-scoop where I lost my language. It went to sleep on me. And I was always told that our language, we were born with our language. And for some reason, in part of the colonial world, really upset the balance to our people. And we've forgotten our ways and to a transformative healing. Umishimalagi peito imosompan tanchuma kegise maminyo atawiyak aisinno kawiki tompogo bigiskwenta wika ko nisto tak mina nistam tagana peni mitawa chak yego tauche ksasna wa chak mino yego tauche umami tunai chikanta timino ego patas mino chu umami tunai chikan ego tapatima mio tawi mino magan. Our transformative way of healing that my grandfather talked about was far more spiritual, because each of us carry a spiritual language. Our ways, in far assimilation and colonization, we were taught, and this is the way it's been introduced to us, a perceptional healing to our people was foremost to educate the mind. And when you educate the mind, again, the body will heal. And once the body will heal, then the spirit, will leave that to the churches or whoever, has that spiritual process to help heal an individual. This is not our way. When we flip this cycle around, it's this way. Foremost is the spirit. We have to foremost, acknowledge a spirit. Once the spirit becomes healthy, then the way of thinking changes. And once the way of thinking changes, it is then and only then the body will heal. That's what the elders have been telling us. And that way is to be able to go back and be able to afford our own creation stories, that have not really been told. A lot of us have been assimilated to think that there is only one spiritual story out there coming from the biblical sense of the Bible and the churches. This is not our way. And we a lot of these stories don't cease to exist, but the ones that really understood it were the elders. So foremost thing is that we need to acknowledge language before we do ceremonies, to foremost acknowledge the spirit. So as this day proceeds in my presentation, I want to share a prayer song with you that you may find comfort in it. And this is one of the prayer songs that I want to be able to share with you. It starts off like this. Kotawino no naskomatan, Kotawino no naskomatan. Oh hey hey hey, oh hey hey yo, kise koma kemene kono. Que se coma no tawe magan, kotawi no nanasko matan. Oh hey hey hey, oh hey hey yo. Aske oma kemene kono. Aske oma no tawe magan, kotawi no nanasko matan. How hey hey hey, how hey hey yo. Wigas koma kemene kono. Wigas koma no tawe magan, kotawi no nanasko matan. How hey hey hey, how hey hey yo. What the words in detail to this song is that the heavens were created for us. So we must thank our Creator for giving us life from there. Creator has given us this land. Therefore, we must give thanks that the land was given to us. And also, the sweet grass was given to us, though we must give thanks to our Creator for that. That is the words to that song. And it's every time we enter into ceremony, this is one of the songs that we sing, especially in Matutsan, in better known as the Sweat Lodge or the Big Lodges and so forth. So it's in this time that I want to begin to share a little bit about about where our languages come from. And these star blankets, we call them Wastesicoot because they're in relevance to the spirit, where the spirit dwells. It's inside Wastesicoot, you know. So there is a star blanket communities that were known as Tagakop is what they refer to it as Sandy Lake First Nation, and also many communities. Now these have been in relevancy, the star blankets, that they're been put out there quite a bit as to we don't know the knowledge to them. So we basically say, wow, it's beautiful, very colorful. It's a blanket that I can cover myself with and so forth. But in wanting to share a little bit of the history and what occurred, it was a blessing to receive such a gift as a blanket, because especially a star blanket. And the reason why we gave blankets is to help you in that connection to the unseen world, especially when we go into the dreams and the reams. That's why blankets were a high priced, you know, to receive a blanket, because it would help you with cover. They call this no patagoswan. The lame term to is agwaniwen, meaning that you would cover. So when you're spiritually covered, and this begins to make sense because of all our lodges are covered, eh? And the reason behind that is that it's only in the nighttime that we're able to connect to the spiritual world, being able to see the star world, to connect to, you know, into those spiritual markers, and being able to have visitations from your loved ones that are in the spirit world, because the spirit is constantly with us, that energy. And our ways are a little bit different. And sometimes a lot of the First Nation languages are unable to be really thoroughly articulate in the English language. There's some terms that are untranslatable without borrowing Latin terms, Greek terms, and so forth. Eh? So we, in our languages, we never had to borrow, you know, a secondary language. And now this is the very, you know, practice. When we get into our next session there, we're going to be talking about the medicines on the connection that we have to Wagotuan, meaning how we must connect. I know this is, we're just getting in the latter parts of COVID ending. I hope to one day meet and greet each and every one of you, because there is a process to learning for our First Nation people on how we teach. Again, being able to smell, to see, to feel, to hear, those four senses. Here, you're unable to even smell my cup of coffee. You can just see it, eh? So I want you guys to be able to smell this, you know, nice coffee. So I hope that there will come a time when this occurs. Anyhow, I'm going to basically pop up a PowerPoint here where I want to be able to continue to go through here, and it's in this time. Is everybody able to see the screen? Give me thumbs up if you can see it. Okay. This is where our creation story comes from, and this is where the star blanket actually comes from. Right now, the current star blanket that's being put out there comes actually from the Buffalo Nation people, and it's kind of lopsided. This is actually the orientation of what the Anishinaabe people and the Anisinuak, better known as the Ojibwe people, and the Cree people, their structure. And I want to actually be able to tell you why we use these symmetrical diamonds. And we call this guy Sipiga Gigiak. And the reason why this that we work with this symmetrical diamond, and it comes from birth. And about 17 years ago, I was up in Toronto with the doctors and physicians in being able to share our knowledge, our Indigenous knowledge about first our traditional medicines and the connection that we have to them with the human anatomy, and how this came about is part of our creation story. And they actually reaffirmed this process. I will get into that process of this symmetrical diamond that we use. This symmetrical diamond, when we are born as Indigenous people to this island, this symmetrical diamond comes from the top of the head. When you are a baby, they call it a fontanel. We call it opoipan or minupan is what they call it. And this is the hole that's on top of birth, eh? And this symmetrical diamond is that is why it's used. They call it a fontanel, in medical terminologies. So eoguma upoipan, that's why we call it esipiustigonet, how everything flows from the top of the head. This is how the spiritual helper comes in here. So as I was giving my talks up in Toronto, to the medical institution there, a woman put up her hand, excuse me, said, I have to ask this question right here, right? I'm just really profound on what you're saying here. Said, I've been a ultrasound technician here in Toronto for the past 28 years. And we receive here women that are, 5 to 6 weeks in their early stages of pregnancy. They come to the hospital, and I'm the one that has to look at the fetus that's inside. But it never fails when an Indigenous person comes to my clinic for this ultrasound checkup, whether they're 4 to 5 weeks. This is the actual thing that sticks out for me, is this symmetrical diamond of this fetus that's it's a perfect diamond, and it begins to spread like this. And in this time, other than a non-Indigenous individual, that a woman that comes for an ultrasound, for me to do the ultrasound, a non-Indigenous, whether they're Caucasian, whether they're other than Indigenous, whether they're Black or they're Asian, their top of the fontanels is actually oval. So we have a language for this. So I'm just very profound on this presentation that you're doing about the star blanket teaching. So this is why we call this a Sipigagigiak. And within our treaties, there's a mention of sepia, meaning as long as the rivers flow, shall flow. As long as the sun shines, the rivers flow and the grass grows. So this is what they implicated our elders. They say, as long as the rivers flow, they're not talking about the rivers out there that are natural. It's the water that you embody. That's why they have that implication in our treaties. So this is part of that. What they are now studying today is Indigenous knowledge, both in science, and they're wanting this information in the higher educational part. meaning the universities are after this knowledge and wanting to be able to now move as one to because of the truth and reconciliation process is one of the recommendations were to bring back languages and culture, and that they are now after this presentation that I'm doing today is it's not out there yet. It's not on YouTube. It's not on. It's not in books or whatever. You know, it's not in mainstream. This is what they refer as paraguchi, meaning it's still in the raw stages. So what I've done through these stories, I'm able to now put pictures into this, into what is known. But this is specifically what I want to talk about, the spiritual marker in the sky. And they refer to these as the Pleiades, and as you notice in the center here, when we take a look at the star structure here, there are 7 stars. So it's in this star structure that we're able to comprehend. And when we call Depagop, you know, Depagop, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, 7. Within that language structure, Depe, Agop, it talks about a blanket, that's going to spiritually cover you. So it's this knowledge that they begin to, you know, I'm not going to get into the story about, I'm just going to give you a little example to this Matutsani. These 7 stars that you see here comes from these Pleiades, these 7 stars. So when they create the shape of this Matutsan, they now have to have seven representatives for the sky, meaning they take each willow to represent each sky, 7 for the sky world and 7 for the natural world. That's why sometimes you'll see a 14 willow lodge. That's that connection that they make. So that is in reference to this Achaga group. So it's in this time that we begin to understand where these symmetrical diamonds come from and what they mean. So I'm just going to stop this part here and get into the actual star blanket itself. Give me a minute here. Pop this up. Are you able to see this one now?
Yes, Jeff, thank you.
Okay. This is what we call Chakagupta, you know, the star blanket teachings. And a lot of this is based upon the stories that have been told by my grandmother and my grandfather. My late grandfather used to have a moose hide that he used to tell us these spiritual markers in the sky, which is known as the Achagi Peganak. And these spiritual markers go, you know, that's why it takes 4 years to tell our creation story. Now, to try and compress this, to try and get some of the benefits that I want you to receive today through these stories. And these stories actually belong to our people of Turtle Island. It was this time that I began to envision through their stories to be able, you know, to begin writing and structuring. I've sat with this knowledge for many years, and how am I going to get people to inundate when they don't want it? Now people are really after our knowledge, eh? And it's a form, a way of beginning a healing process to our people, and to be once again proud from the onslaught of what they did to our people in residential schools, day schools, and also 60 Scoop. and also the Millennium Scoop, which is now known as the Child and Family Services. And it's a part that we identify because we've been called many names, and this identity, such as the Cree people, they've been called Crees, Indians, Aboriginal, First Nation, band, and the list goes on and on. We've yet to declare to the world as to who we are. And we're called Anisinuak, just like Ojibwe, that's not a language. These people are talking Ojibwish, that's where that Ojibwe came from. They're called Anishinaabe. See, we've yet to declare to the world who we are as peoples of this land. So again, and unfortunately, it's left up to the chief and councils to make that change as spokespeople of First Nation communities. So, but me, I've discovered in my path, the gifts of what Creator intended me to be. So I'm Anisinu uta nista esewaku tamanaski mina ese nistutaman umawago tuan. What Creator intended me to be is to have a relationship with the lands and what the lands have to offer. And this is what we refer to as bimatsuan, bimatisiwan, because we follow what our mother gives us each day and how it evolves. And that's why we say bimitisa, to follow it. And this is that transition, being able to follow it rather than following a colonial cycle. So it's in this time I want to begin our story. Now, this particular one has an 8-pointed star, and the reasoning behind what differs from that 7-pointed, star in the sky is that our women, we're bringing our women back to the circle of knowledge. At one time, the women were the gifted ones. The Thunderbird has blessed them to carry the spiritual nutrients of having breast. Every female within our creation story says that the Thunderbird, the Thunder beings gave them this special gift to be able to nurture, the newborn children. And it doesn't exclude just the female human beings. It went on with the four-legged and also the flyers, even the insects and the fish. So these were the ones that, were blessed with this gift to continue passing on that life. But in time, our women were the very first ones that were to carry the ospagan, meaning the lame term to that is the pipe, because they were the givers of life. And when they saw that their men were becoming spiritually weak because our men could not clean themselves on a monthly basis, so this is how they entered into ceremony to continue using medicines and so forth to clean their bodies and going to purify their waters in this term they call the sweat lodge, the purification lodge. So it's in this time that the women passed on this pipe to their men 4 times before they released this pipe to them. And they transferred this pipe because they wanted their men to be spiritually healthy. And that's why you'll see the extension of the bowl from an elbow pipe like this. That extension now is out here. That's the male pipe. And in this time, when they transferred this, our women became spiritually, they begin to lose their ways. They've forgotten about their spiritual gifts. And in this time, we begin to see children being taken away, and now still today being taken away into what they refer to as child and family services and so forth. And now we needed to bring these women back into the circle of ceremony. And this is why the bottom one, the south part here, we brought the grandmother to bring the women home back into these lodges. That's why you see an 8-star structure. So within these colors, within the confines, each of these symmetrical diamonds are sewn together piece by piece. And, I heard one old lady say, this is my coat of many blankets, coat of many colors from that song. And she didn't know the knowledge to this. So this is a part of the knowledge that I wish to share with you today, is the teachings. There are 8 sides to this. So it's in relevancy. In our language, kami gahoma, meaning the color red, and this one here on the outside, within this boundary of this part here, the white, we call this, the yellow part, Osawak, this represents the sun. And we receive that sunlight here on this earth, but that sun actually comes from the spirit world, from the actual Bisim, the sun itself. Here, the green part, they call this one Maskosiachak. And this Maskosiachak is referred to, I do believe it's Neptune, one of the other planets that are out here, and also the blue planet here, Otin. We call this one Otin, the wind, and the wind, and the one that represents that Otin is Saturn, the ring around it. So we have names for these certain planets in our language too, and how they evolve. But I don't want to get too much into the planetation of what's out there. I want to stay within the confines of this star structure. So this is what the actual star blanket looks like, and where these spiritual markers, the syllabics, and when it comes down to it, our creation story began. Our teacher was named Wastesicoot, and he was given the task, such as the Anishinaabe people have they were given their own creation story, and their spiritual teacher was called Nanabush. Nanabushu is what they would call him, But in this time, I want to share this one with you. It's in regards to Wastesicoot. And what Wastesicoot, a lot of our language is set up in parables. So what Wastesicoot mean, when we begin to, explore the language, it talks about Wastesicoot. So the closest translation to that is not a conjurer, trickster, what we're led to believe. What the language is telling us is it is a loving spirit. Wisagiat. And this love is of the spirit world. And the spirit comes from up above. And it flows through the trees. It flows through every animal. And it flows through you like water. That's why we call this Shibi. It enters here and it comes down and it enters Mother Earth. And that's why you say, Esagipagak. Now that the flowers come up and all the berries and nutrients, that's what Sage, this earth loves us. Mother Earth loves us in that way. Just like when the sun comes up, you'll hear that Sage, Saga, still, that the sun is now coming up. It always talks about love. So it's in this energy that we begin to wanting to love one another the way, Creator intended us to be. So it was in this time that Wastesicoot was given this task. And this is what Anishin Na talks about for. And, Anishin Newak, meaning for. It talks about this creation story. So when we look from this doorway to the north, we call this Giwetinok. And it doesn't mean like a magneto process for us, that this needle is pointing to a north. It doesn't mean that. It means a much more. It means a place of home. This is the doorway that the spirit, when he's ready to leave and go home. So that's why we say giwe dinok. So within this doorway, we said, these are the 4 sounds I'm going to take from this doorway. And from giwet nok we have, and here's ka, e, ko. So here's how they sound, because in wanting to understand Romanography, you know, the English language it makes up a sound. So, you know, when this is ah, and when the English took this into an English language, they say a. There's no a there, eh? So our becomes a, and the e becomes, it's e. It's not e, and ke. That's the sound that it makes, eh? And go, like that. Ooh. But when you understand it in the colonial world, it'll just say oh, you know, oh. So we say ah, ke, go. You hear that? So that's the 4 sounds that he had taken from this northern doorway. Over here to the eastern doorway from Wapanuk, and this is where say Wapan, meaning that's where the sun comes up from. And without this, we're able to see Wape, you know, Wapata, you know, that's where that sound comes from distinctly, that we're able to see given that sunlight. So within this doorway, we says that I'm going to take 4 sounds from this doorway. So it's wa, we, wo. So that's the 4 sounds that he's taken from that eastern doorway. And over here to the southern doorway, we call this Zawanuk. Zawan is what the Anishinaabe people would call it. Zawan. They hyphen the Z, eh? Zawan. And here with the Anishinaabe, we have 4 sounds. Sa, se, so. So that's the 4 sounds. And this time here, we now begin the structural language. We now, you know, we have now traced exactly where each sound comes from. So within the western doorway, we call this Nega Bewanuk, Nega Ben. And what this actually means, it doesn't mean west. It means where my mother awaits for me. It's a spiritual responsibility to prepare me for the spiritual dream world. That's why, you know, we at sundown, long time ago, I remember as a child, we all had to be in before that sun went down. So a lot of these teachings come from the mothering and the parenting teacher here. Hence the word negaponok. So this is the western doorway. And then these ones that we take 4 sounds again. Na, ne, ni, no. That's the 4 sounds we get from that western doorway. So within, there's actually the spiritual doorways here. Within this one here, the confines of the northeast doorway here, the very first one in our creation story that was given life was the thunderbird. We call this one Biesio. In the end dialect, Binesio. The TH dialect, Bidesio, you know, and so forth. But out here in the West, they call it Biesio. So within here, the northeast doorway, this is where we get the sound, the P sound from. And here are the sounds. ba, be, be, bo. So 4 sounds. And that's why they refer to us as nehewak, a short term from anisinewak. Nehew is what they refer to it themselves out here in the West. And the second one that was given life of Turtle Island, we all lived on, underwater. Part of that creation story was our spiritual teachers had to sing for this land. And I'm not going to get into that part of the story because I don't want to confuse you from the star blanket. So here, this side here represents Miginasio, which refers to the turtle. This was the keeper of the 13 moon cycles, and these 13 moons are in relevance. And why we have 13 moons? Because within those 13 moon cycles, everything is giving birth at that time. You see, our new year begins here in the eastern part, springtime. That's when we celebrate New Year's. The colonial world celebrates when everything is still frozen solid, January 1st. Nothing is thawed out, nothing is alive right there, eh? Nothing, there's no movement. But here, when the spring beings come, that is when we begin our celebration of life again. That cycle begins over. So within this structure, Miginasho, Miginak, we have 4 sounds we take from that southeastern doorway. So it's this ma, me, mi, mu, ma, me, mi, mu. So it's in these ones we take 4 sounds to it. So after this work, he began, and he had to give a name to everything that has a spirit to it. And we call it Shiship, Watusk, Amit, and so forth. Everything had a specific name to it. So it's in this time he began to understand this that that he gave it a spiritual name for its own uniqueness, eh? So within this one here, that southwestern doorway is what we call this, the cha part, eh? And the reason why I wrote it like this, I didn't want to write it in Romanography, which is CA, CE, CI, and CO. Because I work with younger, students out there that they want them to make that sound. So this is how the 4 sounds come from the southwestern doorway. Ta, J, G, Chu. So all these sounds come from that direction. So it's in this time. That's the south, this is the southwestern doorway. Now we're going to move up to this particular doorway here, this northwestern doorway. When he had finished this work, this is where the sound comes from, of the T sound. And again, this northwestern doorway, there's 4 sounds. Da, e, do. So that's the 4 sounds we receive. In the central part of this fire, Eyamagak. So this is where these sounds come from. Ya, ye, ye, you. So that's the 4 sounds that come from there. And of course, our singular parts, e, e, o, and ah. So that what's known here now is this. If you're able to remember all these sounds, you're now able to speak the language. This is why we call it Wakutuan, meaning that we are related to everything. And it's not a planning system of language. it talks about when we say minisa. Remember this word, this is how we say minsa. Minsa talks about berries. So let's go to this here. All we're doing here, mi, ne, sa. Again, mi, ne, sa. And that's how we're connecting these together to make our language, eh? And it's of the spirit, because we know it comes from either one of these doorways, eh? So again, I want to refer to this. When we said minisa, it talks about berries. So begins just early when spring comes, when all the flight beings are already here. So here's mi, ne, sa. So it's in this part that the berries grow. And these sounds, see, the berries start growing here and they grow within the cycle. Once that cycle is done, they're gone. They've gone to sleep now. We've missed that. That's why we say pimitisa, to follow how the Mother Earth evolves that. That's how accurate that berry part is, eh? Because they only grow within this cycle here. See that? You can't pick berries in the late fall or the winter or in the spring. That's why these sounds are not there. That's why it's so accurate, eh? So again, when in this language, this composes the whole category of how we speak our language, and in the Cree language anyway. So we're able to trace and document a cycle of life for our people. So it's in this time that I want you to listen to this. A lot of times we don't understand what people are saying, and especially the song that I sang could be captured within these sound systems in the star teachings, eh? So a simple way, my grandmother used to sing this song when she sang her children to sleep, and I want you to pay a close attention to these sounds, what I'm making, because it's these 4 sounds where I'm just taking, and you understand where this song is coming from. So an example to this is I'm going to sing you now a song that my grandmother song. It goes like this. Way ya ya way oh hey, way ya ya way ho, way ya way oh, way ya ya way oh hey, way ya ya way ho, way ha way oh. Okay, can you guys see my little pointer here? See my little arrow here? Can you guys see it? Thumbs up. You can see it.
Yes, we can see your mouse, Jeff. Thank you.
So here we go. It's moving here. See? Way ah ya way ah oh, way ah ya way oh, way ah way oh. See, that's the reason why when you go to powwows or ceremonies, you'll hear these certain sounds. You'll only hear these parable sounds, meaning that W-A-W-E. You know, the chicken dance songs, they start that cha cha ya pillow ya cha cha. They're going from here, right? Night guard songs. So we say ma ne to. So all these sounds are, and we're just connecting them, eh? And that's why our elders, the Thanksgiving songs, when the sun goes down, we say, na na sko matan, que se maneto. So here again, we start off, na na sko matan. not so you hear where each sound is coming from. So when you hear a poem song, that's how this connection happens. You're not going to understand the full version because it's this sound of energy that we're connecting to the spirit world. So again, when all our lodges are built here, and this is the knowledge that we were transitioned into being able to understand the why part in ceremony. So when we take a look at this octagon, you see the octagon here, eh? The octagon that's in trace lined in here. So this is how this sweat lodge, this matutsan, this is how we build it. We first make the two doorways here, the north and the south connecting, the east to the west. And each of these have willows on them. That's how it's represented today. So when you take a look at a sweat lodge, and when you go through the process, this is how exactly how it's constructed. Same with the Sundance Lodge. This is how the Sundance Lodges are constructed. So this, better known, if you want to put a label to the star chart and the star blanket, this is a blueprint to a way to our people. So when you receive a star blanket, hang it on your wall, hang it on your wall, because this covers your home. It covers your place of home fire, so your fire does not get put out. And it's not a blanket to go out in there with your gichimus and start making, making babies, or kissing your girlfriend or boyfriend underneath them, eh? So keep that in mind. Honor this blanket, eh? We're going to get into the next part of this series, and I want to be able to tell you a little bit more about the spiritual markers that are in there. So within the confines of this particular white part here, where this octagon here, this represents our world, Aski, our Mother Earth here, because you'll see the bloodline of it, the fire, the sun, the grass, the water, and the wind, eh? That's what that represents. And where that life comes from is in the spiritual world. That's why these ones here, and that's why these teepees, the miguaps are pointed like this, eh? That's why it's a sacred place to be. And they surround our world, our environment, eh? And that's why this diamond is so symmetrically important to our people, because it talks about life. So before we go on there, is there any questions out there?
Hi,
Jeff.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Jeff. It's Diane from Treaty 3, Poju. I just wondered, can I take a picture of this? Of this, what you have on your presentation, or no?
Well, it's like, again, I one of the things that you can keep a copy for yourself, but I ask you not to share it, because this is about 25 years of my work put into the same. And the reason why I say that, I had to go and fast, and I had to go and literally suffer for this knowledge, eh? And this is why I don't release this to the universities, because, somebody's going to end up making money off of this, eh?
I just wanted to use it because I want to do my spirit song. So I'm going to try to think about it that way, the way you talked. Miigwech.
All right. By all means.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, there's a question in the chat. Can you mention again the southwest and northwest directions and what they mean on the blanket?
What's that again?
Can you mention again the southwest and northwest directions and what they mean on the blanket?
It talks about where the blessings come from. Sawanog, it's a parable meaning Sawi, where the blessings come from. When this door opens, all the summer beings come through this doorway. All the flight beings use this doorway, when it comes. So when this doorway opens, summer occurs, and all the blessings come when all the medicines, the plants, the berries, and so forth are given life to us, and that's why when this doorway opens, that's why we do the big ceremonies such as the sun dances during this time, because we don't do them in the late fall, spring, or even in the winter, That's why we refer to these are the blessings. And as for our Cree people, all our doorways face the south, to honor that life. And here in the northwest, you said Tapoy is about the truth, that this is not a theory. It's been actually written as part of our laws. We can't change this, just like winter is happening right now, and we're just getting into the tail ends of our winter. We can't change winter, It's not like taking this this here and using as a scale. So what happens here in the colonial world, they'll cut this pen, this little stick off here, and they'll glue it on top, and they call it daylight savings time to accommodate the clock, It's the same thing. So here, it's about the truth of it, Tapuewin, the utmost truth. Did you get that?
I think they did. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question? My name is Jackie Dakota Gill, and I'm from Edmonton. And so you said hanging, like I won a star blanket in a raffle, and I've been using it as like my blanket, but I should put it on my wall. I always wondered why people had it on their walls. Like I know they're beautiful, but I'm kind of starting my journey of learning. So
yes, it's something that you need to honor, because it talks about, it's actually a blueprint of life, It talks about the unseen world. That's why this is what now I filtered into the blanket, is to have what the elders, my grandmother talked about these things, and this is how I'd sit many hours and listen to the stories. Oh, I see, this is where these sounds come from. And she would always refer to that star of where to our people came from, that star world. And she talked about the 7 stars. She not only talked about this particular, this universe that we live in, she talked about the second universe, the third universe, and the fourth universe, So that's a lot of stories, But within this one, we begin our teachings like this,
Okay, well, I'm going to change it up in my spot. And yeah, I fasted last year, and I'm so eager to learn everything I can. I feel like there's not enough time to.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And this year, me and my daughter are going to take Cree classes, so it's good. Okay,
awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Tansa, Jeff, my name is Jasmine. I'm from Treaty 6 territory. So I feel like this might be like a tobacco question. So I don't know if this is the right context to ask it, but I'll try and then you can let me know. So, like when a person passes away and then like at the funeral, there might be a star blanket placed up, like hung up kind of a thing. And then I know you were saying that like, you shouldn't, that they need to be, those blankets need to be kind of treated differently than regular blankets and everything. So like, if, for example, one was used in that setting, what would then be the best way to use that same blanket?
Well, a long time, like this life is not about breaking laws. You know, that's why we have knowledge keepers. Like I was approached not long ago about doing a going home ceremony, you know, when our people go home back to the spirit world, eh? And they'd ask for a blanket. I said, it's, you know, I don't see nothing wrong with it. And the reason why I say that, because you give them a blueprint to the way home, eh? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You know, you give them this blueprint so that they're able to go and make that journey home, eh?
Yeah. So then, with that same blanket, like, could a person keep it?
Yep.
Okay.
Because this blanket tells us as who we are. You know, a long time ago, we did not have boxes, eh? Meaning we didn't have coffins. We didn't have these things, eh? So we have to be able to change and grow with time, eh? And that's what our elders have always said. You're going to have to grow with, you know, you're going to have to adjust to change. And if you don't adjust to change, you're going to succumb to it, eh? And that's the same with, you know, what's happening. Our burial ceremonies have now been vamped by, you know, by provinces, because, you know, we can't look after them ourselves and so forth. So many of these, you know, legislations and so forth have been inundated that we, you know, what is right, what is wrong, you know. Even, you know, the hardest part was during this pandemic that we weren't able to sit with our loved ones, to be able to do this very, very, you know, special ceremony, and seeing our people as we, you know, greet them on their way home, eh, to the spirit world. And it was a tough 2.5 years. So again, you know, it's more likely, you know, that one of the greatest teachings that the elders talk about is when a person goes home, you know. And I want to briefly share this with you, that, you know, if you have to cry onto this blanket, it's going to mean more, eh? So it tells us, and this is a part when your tears begin to flow down right here, and all of us have cried, eh? So this water that comes out of being spiritually detached from your loved one, these now drop, this water drops and trickles here right to your heart. So what this water is telling us, we now need to begin a process of lowering our loved ones and finding a place to this heart. That's why this water falls to your heart, eh? And that's why Wastesicoot, and one of the greatest teachings of our mystery is that when a person goes home, but we, through our ceremonies, this is how we begin to reconnect and begin to have a spiritual relationship with that loved one on the other side. And that's why they refer to them as ghost dances, but that's a really poor term. We call that, you know, saputawan. That's why there, you know, we now know that there's 4 fighters. That's why we create these 4 fighters to do this ceremony, to reconnect with our loved ones. Our round dances help us reconnect to our loved ones, because that's what this was designed to, honor our loved ones. It was just not a social gathering. That's why we call it Wasagay Nanasko Simwin. When we lift the pipes and we call to our loved ones, to that northwestern sky, for them now to come home and join us in dance and in feast, eh? That's why this blanket is very important to us, eh? The stories that evolve around it. And I'm not going to be able to share the whole story behind this blanket. And it's just not enough time, eh? Does that answer some of your questions?
It does, yeah, thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Oh, go ahead.
Hi,
Hi,
good to see you, Jeff. This is Mavis Stevenson from Peguis.
hey,
I-
Mavis.
Yeah. I Jeff, I wanted to ask you if you would speak about the symbols or the syllabics on the blankets and their meanings. I think that I heard you talk about them before, and I just wanted to refresh
Yeah, we're
my
gonna get,
memory.
yeah, we're gonna get
Did-
into those next.
And the 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 syllabics, like where they came from. I know that they come from the spirit world, um, and that that man, if you would talk about that man that tried to say that he developed that, and so you'll be touching on that.
Yes,
Okay, miigwech.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we have a woman keeps her hand up here. I can't hear you. She's on mute.
The, the blanket, I want them to go, please.
Say that again.
Blanket that I was a baby, that I was, didn't know, I was, didn't know I had that I was a powwow.
Oh, you got a gift from the Powell, from a baby blanket one.
Yes,
Yes.
so I want to know, why there's a blanket that a baby.
Well, the baby's so, the baby's so pure. They have no anger. There's nothing negative about it. This is the purest love that a baby, that's
So
the
I
purest
had
passion.
the baby because I'm the baby one. I grew up and I'm an adult.
Yeah.
So I was an adult because I was growing it, because I had a baby and nobody, I had no family.
Okay, what are you asking?
And then I said, I had no family.
Okay.
So as no family, I had my auntie and my grandpa. So I had my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandpa is her married her, her grandpa married him. So I'm a child. So I'm a child.
Yeah.
So I'm a because a girl that she wants me to do it, that's a powwow. Because I didn't know that I want a girl that I want dancing. You know what happened to me?
What?
Because the baby and a girl helped me down at the shot that shot and dancing and I lie down because a girl helped me down. That's not right. Because I was a little girl. I'm born that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the girl come that she can help me. But doesn't help me again. So she was me. That was Witch Lodge. You know that? You know that, right?
Uh-huh.
So I went to the Witch Lodge. The with lunch, my clothes off, and then my towel, and then and that's it. Have like a blanket for me.
Yeah.
So that's my spirit. So how it turned out the blanket me? Cause I wanna know.
Well,
Well,
hope you need to connect with somebody that that will help you. Like once you hear these stories and have the know-how, you get somebody to help you get a blanket, okay? If you want one.
yeah.
I am not a blanket maker, but hopefully somebody here can reach out to her and help her to
So
try and
I didn't know that I had nobody else, and I don't
yeah.
nobody.
Okay. Well, you're
So
connected to a niche here, and I'm going to actually get them to get in touch with you to try and help you get a blanket, okay?
so when did the story?
Yeah, well, we're going to continue on with the story, okay? So you have
Why?
a better understanding to the story, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Next one. Anybody else?
Hi, Jeff. There's a few more questions in the chat about 3 more. Do you want to answer them now, or do you want to answer them at
No, I'd
the-
like to answer them because we're going to get into
another?
a different area of what we refer to as the rites of passage within this blanket, eh?
Okay,
And
so
also the syllabics.
okay, awesome. Okay, the first question I have here. Oh, sorry, I lost it. The question asked if they were taught to hang the blanket on a wall, but if someone's sick, can they wrap themselves in it?
Yes, yes. Most definitely, because it is a healing blanket, eh?
Okay,
And within the colors, you know, I think that these colors actually produce an energy. You know, my grandmother, that's why we say masinaste son, you know, and that masinaste son it creates an energy, eh? And it was a healing part to us, for us too, eh? Because we all know that our brown skins create an energy out there in that non-indigenous world. So it creates energy, eh? Any color, yellow, it tells you what the mood was. That's why the vibrant colors were always there, you know. And what I've noticed about our First Nation people is they tend to wear black quite a bit. And black, you know, and this is what the elders have told us. Try and dress in colors, you know, like today I'm wearing blue and red, you know. It tells a lot about your energy. So, and when we're so, you know, when we are people that have been hurt, traumatized, we tend to wear black, you know, even throughout, you know, and how that black robe came to our people. You know, when the black robes came in, the elders told us, you know, as part, they said, do not bring the color black into these ceremonies. because the elders they feared this black, because the very first one that they said, do not honor this black, because there was a black spirit that was coming from the east that were going to consume our children and that were going to consume our women. And the very thing, that showed up through the Fort Albany system was the black robes that came into Manitoba, and they came and they began to abuse our children, and and now our women are being missing, because of that dark color. So he says, do not bring this color. So a lot of our people, when they're shamed, they'll dress in black. I tend not to wear black, even though it was my favorite color. I thought it was the cool, Mr. Fonzie days of black leather and stuff like that. But now, at my age, I tend to have vibrant colors, So again, you'll see within these little diamonds here, that there's not even a color black in there, eh? So again, be proud, as to who you are. Begin to, change, make spiritual changes in your life. And it's by these colors that we wear that our Creator recognizes us, as to us being proud again. Next question.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Next question is from Lorraine. Is a blanket gifted to a young woman before they get married?
Yes, it's this time that they begin to understand how these two lives come together. And in our language, there's no such word as marriage, eh? That marriage comes from the churches. And what this process of life, meaning that we come to an understanding, and we promise to our Creator, to our grandfathers and our grandmothers, that we're going to do the utmost to raise our children. And it was a ceremony that was done to collaborate this, but it was not that term marriage, eh? That marriage does not exist, or otherwise you'll have a little ring here, and you sign that that if you get divorced, she's going to take you to the mills, So that was not ours. We understood that this partnership again, and it's the most difficult time, because there's certain stages that we go through, and this is what the elders talked about, of being kawichiaganyan, that you have a partner, and that's the closest term that I can use, my partner, eh? Because we collaborate, we raise children, grandchildren, so forth. He says the most difficult time, he says that when you first enter a relationship, you create this in your mind. Oh, this is she's so hot, she's beautiful, she's all this and that, eh? You start creating these thoughts. Pretty soon, the second part to this relationship, from a man and woman relationship, is the physical part. That's the easy part. All the lovey-dovey stuff and whatnot, eh? That's the hard part. The third part to this relationship of moving as one is the spiritual part, getting to know your partner spiritually, because what life ends up is two energies. You have a positive and a negative. So when it becomes unbalanced like this, when this negative becomes more powerful, then that's all you'll see is the negative part. So that's why we have ceremonies to spiritually acknowledge this, to bring this back into balance like this. And it's always a balancing. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So it's this spiritual relationship, because you're going to have to get to know her negative part. She might, my partner might have jealousy, envy, and not trusting me and this and that. That's the negative part, eh? The positive part is when she's happy. Oh, she's beautiful, all these things begin to make sense. But don't expect this all to be like this, always happy. There's going to be turmoil. There's going to be misunderstanding. So it's always a balancing act. So our young people today, they experience all the lovey-dovey stuff, but then they can't handle the negative stuff, eh? So that's why it ends up dissolving. So, when we mentor our young parents today, we say this is a spiritual responsibility that you're going to have to feed each other, not only physically, but spiritually, and that's the big part, what this blanket, all the teachings that evolve around within this blanket. Does that answer? I think I kind of went overboard there, but.
No, that was great. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Okay, there's one more question so far from Arlene. If a person makes a star blanket, should they give it away?
What's that?
If a person makes a star blanket, should they give it away?
Yeah, I think one of the things that because I know that there's many classes out there, within communities and stuff like that. Jordan Principle now are producing blankets without the knowledge of them, eh? And having to now being able to understand the why part behind the star blanket is the most important thing. It's not the physicalness to it, it's the spiritual knowledge to it, eh? So that you're able to share, this knowledge not only to yourself or to your partner, but to your community, to your children and your grandchildren, so that they're able to now respect it instead of just, throwing some gum on it or whatnot. Because it's something that, it's always a teaching. That's why we call it the star blanket teaching, eh? And it's up to you if you want to give the gift of giving, eh? Because a big part of our mentoring is always sharing and giving, eh? It's always sharing and giving, especially to our loved ones, to our elders, and so forth. And that's a big part of this giving, eh? This transaction. Okay.
Yes, great. Thank you, Jeff. It looks like there's no more questions in the chat, just some good feedback and comments.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can we take a 5-minute break here?
of course. So about 2:35, 1:35 for you. We'll be back.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds
great.
awesome. I'll see you guys in a bit. So we were actually here. This particular star blanket again is kind of upright, eh? Like the way the star should be, rather than sideways, because it's kind of, the ones that they make is kind of this way, eh? That one is constructed out of the Buffalo Nation in the States, eh? So again, we've adapted to that. And again, it doesn't matter which way it's set, it all represents the same. So again, I want to get back into the syllabics right now. We have our own creation story to the syllabics and what they represent and because when you take a look at that, the universe there's our solar system here. When you look into the skies like this, there's another solar system here that they talk about, and this is what they call Aniske-Gisegok, and what they refer to that is the second universe. Now our world evolves this way. It goes clockwise. The second universe that's in there, they have this, what they refer to as counterclockwise. It spins because NASA has now sent a probe into that second universe. And this is where these spiritual markers, we are also the other ones that we looked into the sky because we had such a connection, and these spiritual markers such as the Star of Orion, we're able to translate the Star of Orion such as Wisagechak, And Anishinaabe people call that star in the sky Nana Bush and so forth. So our spiritual stories come from the sky, and all this knowledge that we are aware of these four universes. So it's in that second universe that's there. This is where our grandfathers and grandmothers dwell, the spirits. So I also want to note that when we say mushroom and kokum, when we say mushumish and koko, that's what the short parable to Anishinaabe. When they refer to these ones, it doesn't mean grandfather or grandmother. Like when we say in our language mushroom, it's a short word, meaning that we have shortened this, like from Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, they now shortened it to like CBC, So it's a parable to us. So here's the longer version to mushroom. It says, Omushi testamagewak. So what mushroom literally means in that literal translation, the ones that feel on behalf of what you carry in your heart. And it's of the unseen world. So kukum here, that, which the lame term is grandmother, what it refers to is kawi kukumat achagwa. So the closest translation to kukum is a spiritual comforter. And you see these spiritual roles that a grandmother plays. When my grandfather, was still alive, and his grandchildren, the grandchild would fall and hurt and start crying, he would say, "No, he says, our grandchild is crying." So the grandmother would wipe her hands when she was, and she'd run to the grandchild and pick up this grandchild and put it close here, closest to her heart. And she was like a unique magician, because she was able to make this baby stop crying, to spiritually comfort her, And this is what we refer to, that spiritual comforting. That's what a kokum actually means in our language, So it's in these ones, these spirits, when we do these ceremonies, we are aware of the second universe, of how they come into this world and to be with us. So within that third universe, you begin to understand within our creation story that this is where Wastesicoot dwell. This is our natural universe here in the sky, the second universe. The third one spins clockwise. And when these three meet, they always have a relationship. That's why you see meteor showers. And we sing these songs in our ceremonies. They call it Wastesicoot. And one of the songs that we would sing in that round is so we're singing about this life beyond that, which is the third universe. So, and then the fourth universe is where our creator sits. So it's in these four universes. They also talk about this in the biblical sense, the four heavens. So they have their own uniqueness of understanding to their spiritual stories. So setting that in principles, we say, Neogi Sigawa. That's why we say when we pray, Gagi Simo, Gagi Sigawa Daisimai Mustaman. So that's why we begin to understand that the prayer comes from here, not from up here. When it comes from here, it's physical. It's a physical desire, hence a spiritual desire. So in our mythology of teaching was always based upon intelligence rather than intellect. Intellect is up here, intelligence is here. I wrote not long ago on my page of Keeper of the Language, I shared a story here. My grandfather, when I was about 18 years old, he said, "Grandson, if I was to give you an axe and a knife, would you be able to survive out there by yourself? And at that time I said, no, Musum, I would not be able to survive. He says, I will teach you then. Today, if you were to give me a knife and an axe, I can walk into the bush and survive and be as one over there. When I was young, I was really afraid of my own lands. I was afraid of wolves, bears, and so forth, the elements. Now today, when my grandfather taught me how to survive out there with intelligence, he showed me how to gather fish in the winter time, how to make wooden snares and wooden traps so that I can fend for myself, and how to heat. He even gave me, how to make bows and arrows to fend, to fend for myself, and to be able to tan hides and stuff like that. I was able to do that, and to eat, what was on the land. I'm able to do that. I carry that knowledge today. That's what I refer to as intelligence, to be able to look into the sky and read it, to look at the waters, what the birds are doing. I'm able to do that. I know, the 6 nations, meaning I was introduced to the fish nation, the insect nation, the bird nation of different species, and the 4-legged nation, and the trees and plant nation. So these 5 nations was also the human nation, to understand my own human anatomy and what every part of the body does, in the language. So that's what we refer to as intelligence. And when we don't have the answer, we now have to go into ceremony to go ask our creator, our Musums and grandfathers and grandmothers, for that knowledge to help us guide. That's the connection that we still have. And it's based upon the foundation, because when we begin a re-doctrination of our way of life that has gone to sleep and laid in dormancy, we now need a foundation. And this is one of the foundations to it, the star blanket. So it's in this time when we, right now, when they talk about blood memory, and I want to take you back a little bit about what blood memory, to my understanding to it, how the elders taught me. It's not the blood that understands this. It's actually the water. The water is made up of 3 parts. When we talk about love, this term sagituin, love, the purest fashion of love is when a child enters into our world. They're the purest thing. They come in here with just pure love. There's nothing negative about them. And this love is so pure that you just can't stop but to love a brand new baby. And there's also unconditional love, the ones that you love that are grown. Whatever mistake you make, and that's what I tell my children, no matter you've gone down the road of drugs and alcohol, you're still my child. I still love you, but I don't like the decisions that you make. And the third kind of love is conditional love. And this conditional love has to do with relationships with your own partners, Well, I love you as long as you don't drink. I will love you as long as you don't lie. That becomes a conditional love, So we all have that in our pathways. I love you as long as you don't cheat on me. That's a conditional love. So just giving you an example, and it's this water that is so unique. And when you are unable to understand how your water functions, that's why they say it's blood memory, because it's the water that understands this. And if I rubbed you off on the wrong way, I said, you guys are all stupid. I don't know what you guys are doing here, this and that. I make all these derogatory terms to you. I'm going to rub you off in the wrong way. You'll probably exit, and it's going to affect your water. That's what we call kisiwasi in anger, because you begin to shake. And that's what trauma does to you. And you remember how you remember how somebody lied to you, cheated on you, stole from you, and this and that. You know, your water remembers, and your water is going to react to that, eh? Same thing as giving birth. My grandmother talked about this. You will always remember how you gave birth to every child. And she told us to my cousins that were women, you're going to remember every child. So it's this, you know, when you begin to understand a transformative spiritual way of healing, and you need to understand foremost your own humanness, that's when you'll understand who you are. When my grandfather had put me on my very first fast, he said to me, I want you to think about one thing. And I don't mean to want to hurt anybody by making this statement, because it's a teaching. He said to me, there's two things I want you to think about while you're out there fasting. First thing, remember why you were born. When the day you were born, I want you to remember that. And of course, I remember December 3rd, you know, that's not a problem. I was born in the winter. He said, second thing, I want you to really think about, grandson, why were you born? And this is, I struggled with this throughout my whole life, why I was born. Why my parents didn't want me. I had so much blame, so many father issues, daddy issues, and so forth. And then when I reawoken back to the lands of walking home in 1979 from the States, I ran from custody and I came back to Canada. It was the longest journey of my life, of walking from Emerson, Manitoba into Winnipeg, and from Winnipeg to northern Manitoba. This was the longest journey of my life. And in returning home, I thought people would have their open arms, a big feast and a big gathering. None of that occurred. There was no red carpet treatment when I got home. I couldn't speak my language, but one of the things that I remember is I began to be taught why I was given life. Today, I know I'm well aware of my gifts. I'm a very kind person. I'm a loving person, very understanding. And I also have the gift of knowledge that my grandparents. So I now know today why I was born, to help my people, to help Creator's children to understand that his story as to why he gave us life. I know that gift. And you know, along this time when our young people end their lives through suicide, they don't know why they were given life. And that's the hardest part. And it was through these teachings that I began to find my own way. You know, I don't wish to make a name of myself. You know, I attend ceremonies to maintain, you know, the gift that Creator has given me. And the gifts that I have now, 27 grandchildren and 2 great grandsons. And that's a gift, you know, and that's the most powerful gift that I recognize today, is the gift of life. And so I know why I was born. You know, today I've made amends through these trials and errors of finding my own way, was through my elders. So, you know, ask for help. You're not alone. You know, we've gone through residential school. I no longer tear up when I talk about my experiences, because they're behind me. I look forward to what's ahead of me now. I no longer have to look back to see if the law is chasing me. You know, all that was, you know, all this experience, my own sexual abuse, my own abandonment issues, all these things curve right to this road. And I hold it with the utmost for this never to go to sleep again. So again, I share this with you, some of this knowledge. I want to get into the syllabics right now. There was an individual by the name of James Evans. He was actually, he's buried up in Norrie House, Manitoba. He was one of the missionaries that came prior to the Indian residential schools being set up. And it's in this time that he wanted to convert, and I say that with honesty, to convert this paganism. They say we want to convert these pagans. Within our own history, we're led to believe that Christopher Columbus came to these lands first. No, it was not Christopher Columbus for us. It was the Vikings that first came. And you can see that, that hereditarily historic event that took place with the relationships, because the Vikings were actually called the pagans. And in this paganism, that's when the French began to show up, and then the Germans showed up, and so forth, many different, and they battled amongst each other. So it's in this time, the Mohawks, you'll see a lot of red-haired Mohawk people, light-colored skin, because we began to develop, because they understood there was a spirit on this land. And this is where blacksmithing came from, was from the Vikings. They taught us how to work with these minerals and so forth. This is why we began to have axes and knives, was from them. So it's in this territory that in Canada, especially, that they arrived here and further went upon the coast to Greenland and so forth. So we have a long history with them. And this is, again, when the French, that is where the Métis came from, because we were to share life with them. So again, it's in this time that James Evans made his historical movement into Canada and wanted to begin to change and have a savior through baptism. In every treaties that were signed, that the hereditary leadership back then were from our leaders, people that depended upon through ceremonies. We call them Kisheman, and these Kisheman is what they refer to, the ones that looked for their healing and direction to the land on harvesting and living off the land. We call them Kisheman. So the very first one that was known as a Kisheman was Tepastenam, and he was one of the hereditary chiefs of Treaty 5, is based upon the pagan treaty. There's two treaties, the Christian Treaty of Norrie House and the pagan treaty of Cross Lake. So it's in this time that the ceremonial people fled from Norrie House because they didn't want to do anything, be a part of this, but eventually caught up to them, and they signed the pagan treaty. And this is the only treaties out of all of Canada that Cross Lake was not the one that was baptized. So it's in this time, and in that Treaty 5, that's the only treaty in Canada, the pagan treaty of Cross Lake. That's the wording that is used of Cross Lake. Other one of these were all hereditary. Fort Pitt here in Treaty 6, there's a lot of adhesions, meaning, such as Saddle Lake and so forth. These are the ones that are adhesions. They were signed on to that. There was no negotiating happening. Same as Split Lake, Nelson House, and so forth. That treaty was done. So, and the paw and so forth. So it's in this time the work began of James Evans, and he said, "I'm going to teach and serve as a servant of God to baptize all of these savages. In order for them, there is a language barrier to these peoples." So a lot of his work happened within Lac La Biche and also in Stanley Mission, Saskatchewan, and also in Frog Lake, Alberta, First Nation. So what happened he came out here and began to set up his ministry, and he began to work with the elders. and these elders didn't have a clue as to what they were saying. So it's in this part that they began to understand the language. They wanted to learn how to speak the language. So he said all of these signs came from the Romans. And well, what happened to James Evans is that he ended up having extracurricular activities with somebody else's wife here, and he fled. He ran as far as Norrie House, Manitoba. So within this autobiography of James Evans and the Romanography of syllabics, he stated all the work was done in Norrie House, Manitoba, and that's the documentation that he had given, and that's what's written in archives. But I differ wrong, because the whole Bible was translated in the Y dialect. So this is the untold story of us. So it was in this time, there's many stories that have been told that when the man passed away, he went to that fourth universe and saw these star structures, meaning the what we call achagi beganak, the spiritual markers in the sky. He began to understand where they came from. And it's in this time that he began to work with the people that were knowledge keepers. And he says, in this last kingdom here, when you see this design here in the S sound, this sa, se, se. So it almost looks like a chair. And what it was properly introduced. Now, this is a teaching by itself, where this comes from the fourth world, that creator came down and sat in these positions. So it's in this position that the women now sit in ceremony. They call it bimoga tewape. And it's almost like this is my son's bed here. So this is how the women would sit in that ROS. You see how I'm sitting here? If you lay down like this, that's that same design there. So when you take a look at that S sound, this is how the women sit in ceremony, Because the reason why they sat like this, because they were easily able to get up like that. And the men would sit like this, which is the L sound. We don't use the L sound. The men would sit like this, they call it kahtewapiwin. This is how the men would sit so that they would be equal, in the eyes of our creator, and everybody sat around. But the women, this is the teaching how they sat, just like that design down there, They call that mamo taimao tapuin, mantu tapuin. They say manituapi. So that's that design. And that's how we must sit in ceremony. That's a teaching by itself, So it's in this one here, the connection over here to this K sound. This is how our rattles looked like a long time ago, Shishigwan. And they sat in these, this actually came from the ice movement, because when the ice breaks up, it made this sound. When the ice crystallizes, shh, 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 shh. When the ice begins to crystallize, you'll hear that. So what the purpose of that, when the ice is on the lake starting to move, break up, it makes that sound, shh, shh, just like she, one, she, okay? So this is how the rattles were shaped, because we all lived in darkness. And when we begin to now honor the round shaped rattles, is when the sun came out, because we lived in darkness, part of the dark age era. So that's what this evolves around, that design. This one here, the W sound, this talks about Migoap, the teepees that from our people from this island in 4 directions. And we all understood why there's a little dot over here, is that's where the sun always maintains. That represents the sun. So here, going to the west over here, this is how the drumsticks were looked like many years ago, prior to them, you know, now today they look like those little, the bulrushes, you know, hitting a drum. Now, back then they used to be shaped like this, and they call that mitewegan, mitewegan, because the right side is your physical side, the left side is your spiritual side. So when you held this drum over here, this makes the notion to hear that heartbeat, mitewegan. So it's in this time that it wants to, the physical world and the spiritual world come together as one and creates that energy, a sound of the drum, So over here is what they call these sacred mountains, you know, the sacred mountains where the Thunderbird came, you know, some of these sacred mountains, the Cypress Hills, Mount Rushmore, and so forth. It represents that honoring ship. We call that Watsi. And you'll see these on all the treetops of the pine trees. So that's why when we greet each other, we say, Watsi, Watsi emetuen, because tanse does not mean that it just simply means how, just like anin. It doesn't mean hello, but that's what they use, how, you know, simply means how. So here, these ones here, when you receive something from Creator, pass it on. And the trees tell us that these are the main 4 rooting systems of the trees. And our people understood this. So what is our most trees here that are very sacred? Well, the birch tree, the poplar tree, the other tree there, cedar tree, and what we call the pine tree. So all these rooting systems, that's how they lay, meaning automatic. You know, out west they call them totems, totem poles, So we understand that the species here, this one, the cha sound here, is what referred to the first Union Jack, meaning prior to us having a flag. They call this wapahan. And you see this candy cane structure. If some of you go to a powwow, you'll see this cane bent up. It talks about, these are all my relatives. These are the ceremonies that we honor our nation. That's what they first come in with. They call them wapahanak. So over here, this one here talks about tapo, and the T sound is they call them, you know, they call them askisuin, meaning that we wore these designs. When you take a look at the pattern of a moccasin, you'll see at the edge here, you'll see all these flower patterns, and that's bagosa. And when you put these four things together like this each way, you're going to see a flower pattern, and that's why you see all these ones. They call that skisuin. It's like the buds on a flower, So here, the Y dialect here, the Y part, this used to go like a lightning bolt strike. So when these brainiacs went to school, they said it takes too much space. Let's straighten these out. So they straighten them out like this. This represents the life of the positive because it has a positive charge and a negative charge. That's what creates your heart to go like this, just like a battery, Your pulses, because it needs, in order for this to go, it needs a positive and a negative, just like your battery. So now they've written it like this here. That's why you see this, the center here, the Y, dip, dip, dip. And these ones are just the singular vowels, E, A, O, A, E, I, O. So that's where these ones came from. They came from the sky spiritual markers, and we have our own creation story. And I just want to remind you that right now, when it comes to syllabics, it's a higher ended learning education that we shouldn't try and teach this to children just yet, because we need to maintain each sound, because it takes away from teaching them the sound of language, the spirit of language. If you begin to write this is meant for, you know, grade 12 or better, because it's too much to comprehend. A child cannot balance, because what is balance? You know, when we talk about this brain, and my grandfather talked about this brain, what is this brain? They call it win deep and win tipawan. So this is your balancing tool. So what happens when you tell a child, a 2-year-old, you know, in wanting to, you know, teach them syllabics, you try and teach them what's 95 times 46. Their waters can't comprehend that, you know. So a lot of times when we overstep and begin to teach them here, we understand that tobacco teachings does not come till about the 4th stage of life. You know, today we're trying to teach them about these values because we want it so bad for our children. So there's a time and era where it needs to begin. So one more chapter to this, and we don't have much time here. I want to get into this one here. There are 10 stages of life in our way of life. What they refer to is a chronological way of living, meaning that this system only has 4 stages. And I think one of the questions that I've always asked my audience and the people that I work with, what does a child mean to you? What is a child? Explain that to me. It's a baby. You know, a baby can't walk. A child doesn't have no teeth. You know, they try and explain what this is. Well, what's an adult? You know, what's an elder? Oh, we got to respect our elders. You know, we got to do this to elders, and this is an elder, and this. These are all chronological terms. And when I talk about chronologic, meaning a child only indicates a number. Just like your watch, it'll indicate a number. So in this chronological world that we live in, so from 0 till 12, if you fit within those categories, you are a child. It does not imply any knowledge, nothing, just the number. So a teenager is from 13 to 19. If you fit within those number of years that you in there, it classifies you as a number, a teenager. That is only what it depicts. An adult is from 20 to 64. Now, that doesn't give you the know-how, the education. It doesn't give you intelligence. It doesn't give you nothing. It just gives you a number. I am an adult if I fit into these numbers. Now, these numbers can be manipulated at any given time. Meaning, well, he's a pre-elder. He's 50. You can retire at 50 in Manitoba, 55 in Alberta. This is what, you know, gets you to be an elder here. So I walked into to a restaurant here, IHOP. It says the elders menu, 55 plus. So they're able to manipulate these numbers at any given time. So what is an elder? An elder is from 65 till you're done. There's only 4 stages, and it's a chronological number. And right now, the CFS system, the Child and Family Service System, they don't say a teenager in care, it's just strictly CFS, Child Family Services. So if you're in care, they don't define you as a teenager, they define you as a child in care. So it's from 0 till 18, you age out. The day you reach 18 is how they consider you as a child. So that's what these 4 stages tell us. So when we had to take a look at how my grandmother used to talk about it, The very first stage is spirit over here. They call this awatis, the smallest spirit. So what this actually talks about, so meaning awatis, that you're being lent a spirit, and this spirit is only lent and given to women on every moon cycle. So it's in this moon cycle that when a man and woman don't come together, this spirit merely returns back to where it was given through the women's moon cycles. So, and that moon cycle is called, lame term is a period, when they're on their time and period. So when a man and woman do come together and create the physicalness to the spirit, it takes form as awawe, meaning a spiritual egg, a spiritual embryo. This is the second stage from the spiritual side. Remember what we said, this octagon is the actual world, So now it's now in an egg form. And it's in this time now that it begins the process of being carried inside water, because we come from a water world. So for the next 9 months, the sixth, seventh elements grow. The 2 arms, the torso, the 2 legs, the head, and the spiritual connection to the embryo, that, the umbilical cord. And I know that my grandmother talked about the placenta. This placenta is now the tree that we are given life to, the tree of life. And this placenta is created by the man. The man actually creates this. So after the 9 months, they now enter in this world. We now call the 3rd stage awasis. You see how it's entering now into this, inside the world of the star blanket, the 3rd stage, which called awasis. And awasis does not mean child to us in our language. It means we are being lent a spiritual being. That's what it means, awasis. So after this part, 13 moon cycles, it takes this part, the fontanel, before it closes. Because we know that the spiritual helper, pawagan, is what we call it. It enters in here and stays with you. This is the one that leaves into those realms and has a connection. And this is the one we give that name to, because every part of our body has a name to us. We as people of the land, we're known as Cree people. We already have a name to who we are. But the spiritual name, that's the spirit carrier, is that Bawagan. So after 13 moons, this closes, takes a 13 moon cycle, my granny told me, my kokom. Once that's done, that's when they move automatically into the next stage of their life. We call this mistawasis, a bigger spiritual being that has been lent to us. So after this part, there's many teachings I don't want to get into because of our time length here. So we get into meaning this is when puberty stage happens in this next stage. And this is when human anatomy was told to them how to look after their body, not to play with life. So again, we're told about how our bodily fluids, our lungs, our kidneys, everything about what makes us live, we're told, mentored through there. And after that, next stage, we now are called Wuskapeak and Oskiskoak. This is when the tobacco teaching is passed on, because they now become the fire keepers. And the Anishinaabe people call them Shkabe, and Oskiskoak is what we call them. So it's in this time the women now are mentored to prepare spiritual foods for ceremonies, And all this time, all these teachings we continue to pass down. I remember having to change, diapers for my younger siblings, making them for, canned milk and putting in their bottles. This was a part of mentoring. That's not allowed our way because they'll call that child abuse, eh? So here, once we've always been told where we came from, and here we're talked about this bald eagle. It has a white head and a white tail because it knew where it came from and it knows the direction that it's going. So there's teachings that evolve around animals. Throughout this time, we were told about the bird nation, every bird that lived amongst us. And an example to that is, Umisagaskatus, Opipi Cho, Osese Sho, Chachagano, Wapinego시sak, Ogischaganesis. So all these ones had a specific name. The chickadee is what they call Ogischaganesis, better known as the seed planter. But all these species, Ogishkemancio, I remember all of them. All the fish species were told to us that we just didn't call them fish, eh? There was different species. And also the insects, we were told about every insect and on what their values were, on what they did to help the environment. And so is the four-leggeds, eh? The little beings and the big beings. So we were being mentored through here. When we reached this part about Oskapio, we began to be mentored to have a relationship with every tree, to understand what its purpose is for. And then the plants was optional to us, whether we wanted to learn that, but this was never forced upon us, but they knew the time when it was to be taught. So here, Na'apeo does not mean man. The seventh stage, Na'apeo, to begin this process over. So it's here, Na'apa Tamuin, to envision where you came from, to envision the direction that you're going, continuing to be humble and being mentored by your elders, the older ones. So it's in this time that we what we begin to understand to start this life process over. But this is not happening today. It's not Bill, it's go right here. The ones that are having children are these ones over here, 2 steps back with Kinigawak, and they're feeling miserable to their spiritual responsibilities. Majority of children that are in CFS care come from here. So we can learn, utilize this as a teaching tool. They need to begin to have children here. So the next question that was asked to me is, when do you know that you're an elder? And this part, I quite didn't understand it, but I now understand it. When it's not about a number, it's not about a chronological number for us. It's about when you first have a grandchild, whether you're 47, 52, 56, when you first have your grandchild, they literally move you into the next stage to become away. Now begin to live by your heart. No longer this desire of being young, eh? Start transitioning to live by your heart, because now we're going out the doorway of over here, going back into the spiritual way of dealing with things. A lot of us don't want to move spiritually. A lot of us, we begin to dye our hair and, tighten up our skin, Botox, and wear tighter jeans when we have grandchildren. Today I've learned to grace, grace well is what the old man say. So once here, meaning when it's time now, when the berries begin to now reach their peak and they're going to shrivel up, that's how you're going to have to look at your life and begin to mentor these ones that are coming behind you. So here is the next part that a lot of us struggle with, is we become equal again, meaning the men and women become equal. This is the menopausal period. And this menopausal period, we have a difficult time with this because, you know, in speaking with many older women and older men, the women, because their womanhood is leaving them, they cannot bear children anymore, and you know, they become less desirable. And same with men. You know, this is a part where we begin to think about putting away even your own sexuality, putting it away. But now that they brought the little blue pill, the magic pill, you know, our people are dying because of heart attacks. And that's the truth. You know, I want to be able to speak the truth to each and every one of you. So it's in this time that there were ceremonies that evolved around every stage of this rites of passage. And then when you get to the 10th stage, Kisenu, Kakasewash is the most humble because he strictly deals out of here with you. No Tigoeshu, meaning the most humblest woman that is going to create room and space for you to enter even in ceremony. So once we've done here, once we've done with life, we now go back to where Creator gave us life. That's the better way to understand it. And I understood this when my grandparents, both of my parents, and 4 of my brothers passed on. I buried 2 grandchildren. I don't cry over them because they're still a part of my heart. They live in my heart. And I know that they're always near. Even me talking to you today, they are here with me. And it feels good to have a spiritual relationship. That's what properly grieving and mentoring is about. So with that said, I'm going to stop there. I have time for just a couple questions, and we shall end our day. I want to stop it there and hand it back to our moderator. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Yes, you can unmute your microphones now.
I just want to say thank you. That was really amazing. The linguistic side of it is absolutely fascinating to me, and that whole teaching. Before I turned my camera on, I must have cried about 6 times during this day with you. So thank you for that, and thank you for explaining that the tears were healing me. That is such an important part of the process. So I just want to say thank you, Jeff. I've been to a couple of your tape teachings, and I'm really grateful that you're here and that you're sharing. Thank you.
Hello, Jeff. This is Lynn and Corky. We're watching from Haida Gwaii, but our home is in Red Deer, Alberta.
Oh.
And I really loved listening to you. It was really good. So Cookham gave us, 40 years ago when we got married, Cookham gave us our first star blanket. And I wrote here now earlier that now I know why I can't bring myself to throw it out. And it's tattered and it's worn out and it's coming apart. But for me, maybe it's almost too precious, like an eagle feather or an old drum, that I can't throw it in the garbage. So I guess for me, maybe to go put it in the bush when it's time, or treat it like that, I guess, eh?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
Anybody else?
Hi, Jeff. I just wanted to thank you immensely for this teaching, for all these teachings. I'm just so grateful and humbled and appreciative. I look forward to more of your teachings. And I'm glad I feel even better because you made that connection to Nori House, and that's where we're from originally. although me and my siblings were born here in Winnipeg, both my parents were from Norrie House, and it just made it that much more special for me. Thank you for that. And I really appreciate it, and I look forward to more. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask our moderator there to post up my my page. It's called Keeper of the Language.
Yes.
Wish
Okay,
you
I'll
join.
find it right now.
And it's I do quite a bit of teaching on there to share the knowledge. All right, any other questions?
Yep, neat. I just wanted to know, I couldn't remember the in the star blanket, there was the white color on the outer part. What planet is that called again? I know it's truth, but what planet is that?
The planet?
Yeah,
That's how Pipunia Chak. I think they refer to that as Pluto, eh?
I find that interesting. Thank you.
Right.
Bonjour, Jeff. I just had a quick question. So if
Who's speaking?
somebody,
Who's speaking? We got a camera on here.
I don't want to turn my camera on. Hey, shy.
Well, I gotta see who I'm talking to.
Okay. Okay then.
Okay.
I had a random question about if somebody carries the Star Lodge, does those same teachings kind of fall into place the same as the Star Blanket?
Well, again, you know, like the Star Lodge, I know that Anishinaabe people carry that quite a bit, eh? So it's actually evolves around the creation story, eh? And I think that their creation story on who was to take lead on creating creation comes from that bloodstone of the pipestone, eh? And you know, in living in the States, when I first was reintroduced to my culture, they said, Jeff, we want to introduce you to some people. They're your people. You're an Indian. And I said to them, while growing up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I said, not me, I'm Latino, you know, because I thought I was Latin because I matched the color of the skin and whatnot. But I ended up going down to Pipestone, Minnesota, and it was quite, you know, for some reason that part of that creation story stuck to me. They said, you know, how they harvest this redstone is the 7th layer, and in this time they said how the stone came to be is the grandfathers battled and they shed so much blood, and the one that won this battle became our creator and began to create what you see here. So it's quite unique. So it's in that creation story, but we all come from that same place. We all share the uniqueness of Anishinaabe people and the Anishinaabe, okay? It's just you guys leave out the S's. You guys are missing the S, you know. We say
And the further,
yeah.
And then the further north you go, they start bringing in those K's, eh?
Yeah, the K's.
Yeah. They say it's because it's colder up there.
Yeah. So it's in that star teaching, you know, and I've been to some of the star lodges, you know, in that area of you know, Red Lake and Rice Lake and so forth, eh? And I've seen, but they, you know, they just go on with the actual ceremony. They don't tell us the why part, eh? That's what's missing in our ceremonies. Keep that in mind, you know, that because there is a certain law that we follow. In lack of a better term, I don't know how to put it. We, you know, with this knowledge, we can't make shit up. So it's written in there, and that's the foundation to our teachings, eh? If you count the stars, like, you know, that when you had picture up there the star blanket, the very first, it talks about the 8, eh? The 8 stars, the 8 and 8, the red, that's 16. That's why we must use 16 willows, eh? The next one talks about 16, that coming together, you know, and then the next one is 24, you know, 24. And that's sometimes I think that's what that star lodge is made up of, 24 willows, eh? But also it tells us how many stones to use, 12, and then 32 is the blue part, eh? And then the white part is 40. When we sweat with women, we use 32 rocks, 32 grandfathers, eh? When we do the doctorings, we use 40 grandfathers, eh? So it tells us we have to follow almost a lawing system with that blanket, eh? On how we must conduct ourselves.
Yeah, it's an interesting map.
Blueprint.
Yeah, blueprint. Yeah. So,
Yeah, but,
me
but
good
there's a
for-
lot more to it, eh? Than
Yeah.
just 2 hours. We could spend days and days out.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
spend days and days listening to the stories that you could share. So me gwitch for your time.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna put out a feasting dish and some tobacco for you for
Aye,
sharing your knowledge. So me gwitch.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else?
I'd say Maggie, listen, I got son. Turn on my camera, I guess.
Where are you, Maggie?
Area. Nicosis Kona. I just wanted to say, like, Ninaskomitan, like, thank you so much for all of your teachings today and talking to us and giving us that knowledge. Just Ninaskomitan. Thank you.
Hi, hi.
Did you say Keepers of the Knowledge, Jeff? Is your website?
Yeah. Keeper of the knowledge.
Keeper of the Knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it. I found you on Facebook, and I found Keeper of the Water, Keeper of the Language group.
It'll actually, I'll show you what it looks like, what you're looking for.
Yeah. Oh, so it's the group on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like a website off of Facebook.
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay. I'm joining right now.
Did I just see a flash? Am I seeing flashes, or is that lightning over there?
At my house?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm right by the window and it's snowing and I've got a massive swarm of birds over my house making a big heart shape right now, actually.
All right.
That was me. I took a picture of your
Okay.
website. Sorry. I didn't realize the flash was on.
All right. Anybody else?
Hey, Jeff, I just have a quick question. Is it okay if people request your email? Can I give it, or do you not want that?
No, you can give my email.
Okay, I'll write that in the chat. Thanks.
Is that Patsy?
Yeah, that's
Patsy.
good to see you. This was so amazing, and I learned so much every time. So I have a question. I've been asked about something that's really difficult to answer because you run into the same kind of chasing your tail. It's on this idea of pronouns and how people are using he, she. And then I start to think about when I was young and how my dad would or my parents would both make the mix up of not referring to somebody as he or she. My dad would often say he when it was a she. So I'm wondering, in terms of the language, are we misusing or misguiding something when we're making, when people are being expected to use pronouns? You know how people are using pronouns in their emails and the reference to that? And I think maybe who woke me up to this idea is this young lady who just passed away, Ashley Hunter. She had wrote a little blurb that probably was with her Kukum Emily and that family of language speakers in Goodfish.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote a little blurb about how we don't differentiate the gender. We're just spirit. So I wanted to see your idea or understanding or what I could have insight.
Well, yeah, we all go back to how, in this natural world, it's okay to differentiate, when she said, the male and female, eh? But you notice how I was talking, we're here, we become equal as one again. Just like we almost come like that diamond, eh? Then we begin to separate. When we see it, then going back into life, we're equal again, eh?
Yes.
So that's why we're children can have children. And same with elders cannot have children, eh? We now go back into this, as a spirit. Spirit does not differentiate, male or female, because we come, we're called awasis. And the reason why we call awasis is that term, ogi sigosis, eh? Ogi sigoak. That's why when we go back, now we become ogi sigoak, eh? We don't come ogi sigoak, the natural ones that define school, a samage cheats is what we would call that one, eh? Not gogomenage cheats in the sky. So a samage cheats is what the elders would call that one, eh? The one that feeds us spiritually.
Hey, so then it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Good to know. Because I also hope I can get in touch with you sometime. I'm being asked to teach a language class. I want to talk to you sometime soon. But
Yeah.
thank you. This was awesome. Hi. Take
All
care
right.
and say
What's
hi.
And said Jeff, this is Loretta DeCoon.
Fancy Loretta. No tigreshes.
There you go, Napig minuto, Agusin.
Eh,
Haven't heard you in a long time, so it's good to hear your voice and hear your stories. Very powerful.
Tante go yain.
Puta Thompson in weekend on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys. They speak.
Yeah, we
Take a wee summit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we but go tonight, man.
Okay, well, payami kanan chip.
Ah, tapos. Ako na go to Scott.
School district, yeah, but
Okay.
yeah. Last year you came for the Cree Language Festival. Pwede kitong kay summit nan
All right.
in May and June spring ceremonies. They have them. Okay.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Jeff. There's a question in the chat. Why do you speculate Indigenous children in the womb have a star, but all others have a circle, even when African nations have star teachings?
What's that?
Why do you speculate that Indigenous children in the womb have a star, but all others have a circle, even when African nations have star teachings?
Well, they do have star teachings. This is what the scientists are telling me, eh? And I remember that my grandmother had raised almost a Métis grandchild, eh? And he would call him, which is a cousin of mine, which is Anthony Keeper. His son is an NHL right now, Brady Keeper, eh? And I would always wonder, he says, meaning an oval shape fontanel, eh? And I didn't, I wasn't the one that wrote the book on this. This is coming directly from a person that's been working for 28 years with ultrasound, eh? On how we connect with the star, the diamond star, eh? And whether these star teachings are from up here, they differ from nation to nation, eh? Just like the tree, the sacred trees that we have, and those sacred trees only exist here with us, our most sacred tree. And the reason why we connect with that in that sense is just like the Asian people, better known as the the Japanese people, their most sacred tree is the bonsai tree. And the ones from overseas, and in the biblical sense, their most sacred tree is the olive tree that ceased to exist here, not unless it's transplanted here, eh? And just like the BC coast, their most sacred tree is the cedar tree, Masagiwatik. The Anishinaabe people and the Cree people, their Mantusana, I think, is the popular tree. And I don't like the term popular because when the first Europeans came, this is a no-good tree, but it's the most popular and most abundant tree here. So they named it. They didn't understand this tree. And in the East Coast is that Native people over there refer to their most sacred tree is the birch tree. And the Lakota Nakota people refer to their most sacred tree is the cotton tree. Now, when you take the bark off of this cotton tree and you look at the inside, it's in that 7-star diamond, eh? So that's how we're able to connect with that. And it's not, you know, wanting to disillusion anybody. This is what the technicians and the lab people are telling me, eh? And this is why we have such a value on the star blanket. Now, if this was all common, you know, the non-Indigenous people would be using the star blanket too. I don't know if that answers your question.
Hey, Jeff, it's Tracy. I recently heard that the maple tree is the chief of the trees for Anishinaabe. And I'm just wondering now with the popular tree.
I think what they call, I don't like the word chief tree. We call that Ininiwatik, the people's tree, meaning it gave life. And that's the same with the Cree people. What gave us life was that birch tree, because we tapped into it and we made the sap syrup and whatnot for medicinal use and also our daily use. Eh? You can boil that tree down and actually make syrup out of it. Eh?
That makes sense, Miigwech.
Yeah. So,
there's one more question in the chat. What is the protocol to accepting and welcoming a star blanket when someone says they'll make it for you?
A lot of times we give gifts, eh? And harshly, this is another word that really doesn't suit me as a protocol, eh? When you follow your heart, the old people would say, you can never go wrong. If you follow your mind, you will go wrong. So when you give the gift from the heart of making something and dedicating that time that you've actually put that spiritual work of going like this and cutting it and it's that giving. There really was not a protocol, but when you ask somebody to make it, that's when you should actually acknowledge them, you know. Today, you know, many times that my grandmother was a seamstress, they would come and give her, you know, things that she was able to use. Even my grandfather, he was a carver and so forth, so that they would bring him axe, knives, chisels, you know, stuff like that he can use. It was not so much tobacco, eh? And my grandmother, some people, when they would come and get medicine from her, they would bring a bag of flour, something that she can use, eh? So today, you know, I don't want to be able to nail this into this is the protocol here, and this is the way you need a tobacco, you need, you know, cloth and the whole 10 yards. No, once you give from the heart, you can never go wrong. So that term protocol came from the army, as the general set the protocol, you know. It's these things should never be put into stone. But when you want somebody to speak for you on on your behalf to the spirit world, yes, bring tobacco.
Okay, hello, Jeff, could you hear me?
Yeah, where are you?
I'm Lance, my name is Lance Scout. I'm hoping you could hear me. I've been having trouble with oh yeah, I'm on. I just wanted to, acknowledge just what you said. I work with CFS. I really am touched by because I do a lot of the feather teachings. But this has kind of expanded my, going from the 7 to 8, but now it's 10, and it makes a lot of sense, in the Cree language. But I always been questioned with the CFS workers, in respect to protocol. And this is what they want me to do in a couple weeks, is to give them that knowledge of protocols. But, I was feeling it here, but just when you mentioned, from the heart, it gives me that inspiration to teach just what you said, because that's how I was taught back home from my grandmothers and grandfathers. But I get caught up in modern world, and we're really moving away from that traditional, I guess, that original heart.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to thank you. And I'm from the blood tribe, the Kainai.
Oh, I've been down there.
Yeah, I've been living here for three years. I'm here in Edmonton.
Yeah.
But I'm doing some good work, but it's because of listening to people like you, like the elders from up here. That's what I like to, but I thank you for all this knowledge today.
Hi. Well, I thank each and every one of you. I know I'd like to get to all of your questions, but I do have another engagement in 3 minutes. I have to get on another Zoom here. So with that said, I thank each and every one of you. I'm kagip man tu tawiek. We nanas kumakasami na go tawi now. Tapwe ego sinema tawi utna maswe go tawche. Apoitige ki tonga gi gato no. I just want to thank each and every one of you for lending me your ears this afternoon and your hearts, and to be able to take something away from here today and to continue. And I hope to meet with you guys again soon, or my new English word, soon le. That's not even in the dictionary. So I want to put that in the dictionary. I hope to meet with you guys soon le. So with that said, I bid you a good weekend. My grandchildren are climbing the walls, and we're going to go for supper. I come to town this week, so I'm looking forward to a good weekend here. So I thank you guys, and we'll talk to you again soon.